Welcome to the Culture Edit. Unique perspectives into the personal and professional lives of individuals at the helm of successful business, athletics, art, and design. Welcome to the Culture Edit. It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon. I almost said morning. And we're on episode 24.
We didn't get it wrong this time.
We got it right.
Yeah.
Although probably when I upload it, I'll put it as the wrong episode.
The wrong
and
number.
then have to go back and fix it. But
Yeah.
par for the course.
Saturday after Thanksgiving, thank God that's over.
What? It wasn't that bad. What? Why do you say thank God?
So people will start working again.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, we didn't
This
even
whole
do...
thing that started, I think it started in COVID, where basically people don't work the week of Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Like I remember, back in my day.
I was literally just about to say, I remember when I was a young whippersnapper.
Yeah, I would like literally take off Thanksgiving Day and then I'd be in the office the next Friday morning.
You are superior.
Well, but people, like we saw that week, people were not working.
Yeah.
Not returning emails, not returning calls. And we got a lot to do before the end of the year. And what's annoying about that is that people aren't working the week of Thanksgiving. And then so we're going to have like 2 weeks of people working again.
And then they're going to
it's going to go into the holidays.
Yeah.
Hopefully things back to normal next week. It's not that I dislike Thanksgiving. I just don't like the not being productive part.
Well, we were very productive. We worked. We worked until
Well, 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock the night before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And then woke up and did a half marathon.
Yeah. So you want to give an update on how that went since we talked so much about the build up to it?
Well, it was going really well until it stopped going really well.
Hello, friends. I interrupt this podcast to take you on a Thanksgiving half marathon spirit journey. I call it Mic'd Up on the Road. Enjoy.
8 more sets of 1. You can do anything for 8 miles. You can bear crawl for 8 miles if you had to. At least that's what I always tell myself.
And now for the fun part. I call it Mic'd Up when the wheels fall off.
It's so painful. It just won't even go away. It's like my hip popped weird. It's just like all of a sudden started hurting so bad. I feel like I have to keep going or I'm not gonna.
Yeah, I guess up until about 8.5, mile 8.5, I was moving. Obviously, there's a lot faster people out there, but for me, I was averaging like a 7:30 pace. I came out of the chute maybe a little hot, but I talked to other people afterwards, and a lot of people had a similar thing because you're actually going downhill for quite a while. With like the first mile and a half, 2 miles, you're pretty much going downhill. So it's kind of hard to not come out of the gate a little bit quicker than you normally would because you're almost like I would have to be putting on the brakes to not go that fast.
But you said you were not going to do that, and then you did it.
Yeah.
But so did Weesty and so did Richard.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You're all in it together.
Well, I think it was the downhill into Piedmont Park that messed me up.
Down 14th?
Down 14th because that's a pretty steep downhill.
Yeah.
And something with my hip just did not, I don't know what I did to mess my hip up, but when I was running through the park right before I saw you, I felt the twinge of pain coming on, but I was thinking it'll be fine. I'll slow down a little bit and then it'll go away. And then when I was running up 10th, right after I saw you, I was like, oh no, this is not good. And the pain in my hip was just getting more and more intense. So I stopped right after I saw Ian and Eleanor. And I basically tried to stretch out my IT band. And I was like, it's fine. I'll just take a minute, stretch, try to catch back up to the pace group. And yeah, the pain never went away. And for the last 5 or so.
Basically hopping on one leg.
It was
I saw you the rest
brutal.
Of the time.
But I was trying to keep my pace up still. So I was pushing off my left foot and then barely touching my right toe down. So hopping.
It looked pretty funny.
I didn't know what else to do. I've actually never felt that much pain doing a physical activity before. There's lactic acid pain, where it's building up in your muscles. There's that type of pain, which obviously I felt a lot with the bike. But this was pure sharp knife in my hip. And you don't typically get that type of pain on the bike unless your fit is really messed up. But I hadn't had that much pain, and I almost started crying. Well, I didn't cry, but I thought about it. But then I was like, that doesn't do anything.
Did you ever think about quitting?
No.
So you got it done. Oh, what was your time? Was it 1:49?
Yeah, like 1:49.
So your goal was 1:45. So you're only 4 minutes.
Yeah, I had
That's your
to run through some serious pain.
Yeah.
Like I was grinding my teeth. It was insanely painful.
Yeah. So
But
and your wheels came off, and then I guess Richards and Weesty said theirs did too. By the way, Jeff Richards, former guest of the show, and Jim Weesty, friend of the pod, and also on our Speed Club team. They were extremely disappointed with their results. They both got second in their age group.
averaging like a 6:20, 6:30 pace, I think, for both of them.
Yeah. Yeah. They didn't even look up the results. They just left.
I
So
know.
you had to tell them their results.
Yeah, it was crazy. But really awesome.
Congrats to them too. I mean, like I said, if they just had gone a little bit harder, they could have won.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and even
That's the way it works.
we had a lot of cyclists do well. So the kid who won the overall thing, I call him a kid. I think he's probably in his 20s, so he's
Yeah.
not technically a kid, but he's young. Dar, he occasionally rides with us. I know I've met his dad before on the bike.
Yeah.
But he he came in first by like a lot.
He won the whole thing.
And yeah, the overall winner, male winner, and I think his average pace was 5:10 per mile. That's fast.
Really fast. Yeah, and then Cooper had an amazing race. Didn't you say he won his age group? No, you didn't.
No,
Top
he
10 is
got
age
like
group.
6,
Yeah.
but his age group was insane. I mean,
Yeah.
they were flying.
Yeah.
But he did really, really well. So the cyclists showed up.
Yeah. Josh was there too.
Yeah, he was running with his daughter. I saw them.
Yeah.
They had a great time. I think they came in right at 140.
Yeah. That sucked, but can't wait for Miami.
Yeah, I mean, I was really happy. Like, I was really happy with. I honestly couldn't be that down on myself because, like, I mean, injuries happen. Like, I think it's probably either bursitis or just my IT band is really, really tight and causing some friction.
I think it could be the fact that you have only been running for 2 months and you did a half marathon at a 7:30 pace.
Yeah, that could
That
be.
could have something to do with it.
I don't
Like
know.
literally not running for a
Yeah.
decade, and then you run for 2 months and run really fast. That's like the recipe for getting hurt.
That's true. Yeah, that is true. But the thing is I really struggle with. I can't sign up for something and not give it my all. I am an empty the tank and go in like running on fumes type of person, which doesn't always work out the way you want it to, but sometimes it does. Sometimes it works out really well and you do way better than you thought because you did empty the tank.
Yeah. So that was our Thanksgiving. Then as soon as you got done, you went home and made chicken dumplings
Yeah.
for Thanksgiving.
Cooked a nice little
My
chicken.
grandmother's recipe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was really good. Comfort food.
Yeah, I ate too much.
Brought some over to Megan. She was unfortunately sick with COVID, so we had to bring her some quarantine food.
So I know we've got a guest that we want to get to pretty quickly, but we also, 2 things I think we want to mention: feedback from the last episode on your perfume recommendations.
Raving reviews. I've influenced a lot of people.
Yeah, I talked to a couple of people. A couple of guys are like, I never in my life would have thought I would be listening to someone talk about perfumes for 20 minutes. But I was enthralled because Nikki's so passionate about it, and I didn't know that world existed. Yeah, and then the Atlas review, lots of people also agreed, I think.
Weren't surprised.
Yeah, as well. So that was good. And we didn't get any death threats or anything. So
Yeah, no, we're good.
yeah. And then last thing we want to mention, so what I did today.
Oh, yeah. Preparing for the big kickoff next weekend.
Yep. So we start our winter training ride, which we've organized for the last 4 years. Winter training series, and we will start this coming weekend, the 2nd. A little bit different format. We're not going to go super long every ride. So normally we go between 90 and 120 miles. Instead, we're going to be more around the 60 to 70 mile range, endurance pace. This is definitely a elite level ride. So got to have skills to be there.
Advanced training ride.
Advanced
is what we're
training
calling
ride.
it.
Yes. And that's really just for safety purposes.
Yes.
I mean, we've got people that don't want to be in a crash. So more on that to come, but you can get more information on that on our Speed Club newsletter. Maybe put a link in the
Yeah, I can put a
notes.
link in the bio.
But
Link in the show notes.
yeah, so we're gonna have a new newsletter that's gonna be coming out every week. That'll have some other new interesting information in it.
Yeah, Michael's going to be driving that.
Yeah.
He's going to be creating the content, pulling it together. There might be a little section.
He's gonna have his own little column.
Yeah, his own column. So look out for that because he's going to be putting a lot of work into it.
Yeah. And then we'll be sharing some other things on that as well. So it's not just about Speed Club Saturdays. There's going to be a lot of different fun, interesting things in the new Speed Club newsletter. Speed Club Media, I think is what we're calling it. Right? Is that what we decided?
I think so, yes. I like Speed Club Media.
And then also, just another reminder, our other newsletter, which is the Culture Edit, which is what this podcast is also, we should put a link to the bio on that. Very popular newsletter.
Yeah, that's more work related, but
Yeah, work and culture related.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with sports or athletics, but it gets a lot of clicks, a lot of opens.
and Chad puts his like bi-monthly playlist that he makes for the office. in there,
Exactly.
so you can get some good tunes too.
Yeah.
We're really excited this week. So we recorded with this guest a few weeks ago and have been anxiously awaiting the launch of it.
We've been sitting on it like it's a ticking time bomb about to explode.
Like I'm a mother hen keeping the egg warm, ready to hatch. It's really not that controversial.
Anxiously.
I feel like ticking time bomb sounds bad. It's not bad.
Well, it's just a lot of energy.
Yeah, a lot of energy. Great character. I'll let Chad, kind of give the background because it's one of his best friends. But it's going to be a really great episode.
Yeah, so Todd Aidman is our guest today. And Todd is a partner with the law firm of FordHarrison, which is a national labor and employment law firm. And Todd is on the executive committee there.
He's the rainmaker.
Blame it on the rain that was finally falling. Blame it on the stars that didn't shine at night.
He has been one of the top partners there for a long, long time. He's nationally known and recognized. He's basically won every award you can get as a lawyer. He practices in, as I mentioned, labor and employment. So we're going to talk some athletics with him because he is a phenomenal athlete. He's done a lot. From endurance sports to competitive CrossFit, which he'll talk about that he now does in his garage. And then we'll get into some really interesting work-related things. So it's a good conversation, especially I think if you're interested in things like what's going on with labor unions. Like he breaks that down for us.
It's a really good educational episode.
You're getting free advice from a nationally known labor and employment attorney that gets paid a lot to give this advice. So it is chock full of great nuggets of information. Todd is, as we were talking about earlier, he is very much a character. When you talk to people and you say, that guy's one of a kind, you'll see that Todd Aidman is one of a kind. He's a great storyteller. He's got some really interesting stories for us at the beginning. So he's very much Florida man, lives in Tampa. Full disclosure is Nikki mentioned, Todd and I were roommates in law school. He's the best man in our wedding. I was the best man in his wedding. So we go way back. So enjoy this. This is a really fun one. And like we said, buckle up and enjoy.
All right, Todd, welcome to the Culture Edit.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
What are you training for?
Right now, I am thinking about running another ultra marathon. My last experience with one was earlier this year. I've got a very good friend who is the commander of a SEAL team, and he was abroad for 6 months, and when he was coming back, several of us were going to get together for a guys trip. I had in mind that we were going to go camping and make s'mores and drink adult beverages, but instead he told us he signed us up for an ultra marathon, which I really had no interest in, but when these guys say something, you say okay. When I was about to start training about 2 months before the event, my 50-pound basset hound woke me up in the middle of the night because he had to go to the bathroom. So I began walking down the stairs, and unbeknownst to me, he had already gone on the marble stairs. So I did a cartwheel off the marble stairs, ended up breaking my foot on dog urine. So I didn't train at all, and I showed up and did the race.
How many miles?
It was only 31 miles, so it was
Only?
a 50K.
Okay.
I did not train whatsoever and just showed up, and it was absolutely miserable, but I was glad I accomplished it, and barely upright, so I'd like to do it one more time and do a little better job this time.
Did y'all stay together?
No.
No.
It was the tortoise and the hare. I was looking great for the first 18 miles, and the final 13, I looked like The Walking Dead.
But you survived.
I did survive.
What was the worst injury or pain the next day from that run?
Going up and down stairs, particularly downstairs. I had to walk backwards, and then eventually I just started doing the booty scooty down the stairs because I couldn't stand up. It hurt so bad.
It's always like I was telling Chad this morning, my feet always hurt. Like after maybe I just need to get different shoes. I don't know if that's what it is, but it's like
so many
my
different
metatarsal, the bottom of my feet, like the ball of my foot is always sore.
Well, I have the world's flattest feet. If I step on something wet and then step on something dry, it looks like a dinosaur was there. Just 5 toe prints in a whole foot. But thankfully, my feet were not the problem. It was just my quads were destroyed.
So you've done Ironman,
Yes.
obviously marathon, ultra marathon. You've done countless CrossFit competitions.
Correct.
What's the hardest when you think about it? Is it the ultra marathon? Is that
No. The Ironman was definitely the hardest.
yeah?
I did not know this at the time, but I had athletically induced asthma. So the final 13 miles of the run, I could not breathe whatsoever. And about mile 21 or 22, I saw an ambulance. I said, I better go over there and have them check me out. And then I thought they'd pull me off the course. So I said, I'd actually rather expire on this course than not finish this thing. So when I traveled back it was in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. When I traveled back to Tampa a few days later, I went into the doctor and said, I can't breathe. And they said, well, right now your lung capacity is 30% of what it should be. So, it was like breathing through a straw, the final marathon. And it was very hilly there. I live in Florida where it's super flat. So it was definitely a different experience. But honestly, what hurts the worst is running 5Ks. It's a dang sprint. In that final mile is, you find religion.
What about you did the Green Beret challenge?
I thought you were going to say the Green Beret challenge thing.
I'm surprised that's not the hardest.
A few years ago, one of my friends was getting married, and he was kind enough to ask me to be his best man, and I was in charge of planning the bachelor party. And we were outdoorsy type people. He was an Eagle Scout, and we did CrossFit competitions together. So I found a group of Green Berets that would train us for 24 hours up in North Carolina near where they were stationed. The first 8 hours was absolutely terrible. This is the only mountain I've ever been on that at all times you're going uphill. Even when you thought you're going downhill, you're going uphill. And they made us wear like a 40-pound ruck while we did it, and we just went for 8 hours straight. And I distinctly remember they gave us a break at 8 hours, and one of my friends I was doing it with, I was most excited about eating. I wanted to eat. I had a brand new jar of peanut butter, and as soon as we got to base camp for this 30-minute break they were going to give us to eat, he stuck his entire dirty hand in my peanut butter and took a big scoop like he was a backhoe and ate out of it. So I had to throw the peanut butter away, and I never ended up getting to eat.
There was no way you were going to eat after that.
You have no idea what sort of funk was on our hands.
Okay.
So I was not eating it.
How angry were you?
I was thinking about killing him, actually. I was but he was much larger than me, so.
So how do you go about, so you hire Green Berets to are you like, dear Green Berets,
No,
would
it's
you
like
like to,
there's
or
like
is
a
it a
program.
program?
It's
It
a
was an
program.
actual program.
Okay, so it's
yeah.
a program. All right.
I
wasn't
didn't
sure.
send like a Dear John letter to the
Okay.
base saying, is anyone willing
For
to
my
do
friend's
this?
bachelor party, I really want to kill him.
I don't know if you remember, but I was supposed to go. Like Todd was full court pressing me like
Yeah.
I was his dream girl in high school to go to this Green Beret thing, and I think I agreed to it at some point.
You did
Why
agree and
didn't you
then
go?
changed your mind.
I think it was I gotten injured or was worried about injured or had a big race or it's one of the best decisions I've ever made though. I'm 100% confident that I would have been completely broken by the end of that thing.
I think just the ruck pack alone, because you don't train like that.
Exactly.
Like the CrossFit, like you do like weight vests and like you do a lot of upper body stuff. Like your back would have just been destroyed.
So one of the biggest challenges, we were cold the whole time and you're constantly fatigued. And I made friends with one of the instructors at the end, and I said, look, I know you guys are the world's most elite athletes and soldiers, but how do you do this no sleep thing? First of all, I said, how is this like your normal training? He goes, this is our actual training, although we do live fire. He goes, this is exactly what we do. I said, well, I'm only doing this for 24 hours. You had to do this for a week. How did you survive? He said, chewing tobacco and Tabasco sauce in my eyes. And I said, you guys are a different breed because
Jeez.
No, thank you. Nikki's training for a half marathon.
Yeah.
And she wants to do Chicago next year, a marathon.
Chicago's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I signed up for the like lottery to get into the qualification process, I guess. So
Did you do Chicago?
I've done it twice. I don't know if I should tell you all this story, but I will anyway.
Yeah.
I'm always very particular when I race. I know exactly what clothes I'm going to wear. I know when I'm going to take gels, when I'm going to take salt capsules, on and on and on. So the year I did the Chicago Marathon was the year they stopped the race at a certain point. Some people had got very, very seriously injured because they ran out of water and it was so hot. So I was going to try to qualify for the Boston Marathon, and I was fortunate enough to get one of the front starting corrals right behind the pro runners. The reason that's a big deal is there's about 50,000 people that run the race. So if you're not near the front, it could take you a half hour more before you even start once the gun goes off. So I was thrilled about this, but I show up at the race start and it's close to 80 degrees. So I know my plans are going to be shot. It's not going to be a good day, so I'm just going to have fun. But I decided once to get into these corrals, it basically takes an act of Congress. They have security, they have police, they check your number, they check it multiple times. Once you get into this starting corral, you can't get out of it. And you've got to be there about an hour and a half before the race. So I'm pretty discombobulated because I know my race is shot and I don't really put my stuff together how I normally would. And I'm in the starting corral and I realize I really got to go pee bad.
Yeah.
But I can't get out of the starting corral. So I know it's going to be really close if I qualify the race. I decided just sometime during the race, I'm going to just go and nobody will notice and it'll be no big deal.
Well, because you can walk and pee. I know this is a fact because I've seen it happen.
You can run and pee. You can
It's like our dog.
Yeah, if you're really good, you can run and pee, and people really don't notice.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stop at a porta john because literally that 30 or seconds or more, or whatever the line was, would make the difference about whether or not I qualified for the Boston Marathon.
Mm-hmm.
But I was a little shy and bashful about this. I didn't want to pee in front of people. Unbeknownst to me, Chicago Marathon's like running through the Macy's Day Parade. There's 1.5 million people that come out there. I got to mile 13. There was never a break in the crowd. So finally, I would say probably mile 15, there's a break. I go, all right, now's the time I'm going to go.
Yeah.
Well, I had forgot to put my salt capsules in a Ziploc bag. And instead, they were in my pocket. Somehow the urine activated this, and I was foaming up like I was in a car wash, but it was...
Wait. So I want to make sure, I guess. You're just going in your shorts.
Yes,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
going
Oh,
in my
see,
shorts while I'm running.
I was thinking that you were like pulling your pants down.
No.
Because
no.
but that's what cyclists do. Guys literally will whip it out and just pee.
Yeah, we just pee
riding
on
and
the
they're
bike.
There was no whipping. I was
Okay.
just running in my shorts,
Just
peeing
running and
like
peeing?
I was an infant, and the liquid activated the salt capsules, and I was foaming up. Piles of urine foam were flying off.
Was
of me.
it
People were
like
looking at me.
yellow? Like it was like yellow?
Yeah, it was
foam?
yellow foamed, bubbly off my body.
At the
So
next water station, were you like dousing yourself with water?
at that point, I didn't care. I just kept going.
But were people like pointing? Like, did people
Yeah,
realize?
I believe some people noticed. It
People
was-
have photos of this out
Maybe
there somewhere in the
somebody
universe.
else is telling this story right now about this guy that wet himself.
100%.
Yeah, we have a friend Shizzle that at any chance he can pee on the bike, he just pees.
Yeah.
He's like, so
He's-
you just
he's-
gotta go.
He's peed in his bibs too, though.
Yeah.
Well, the other sort of funny thing that happened that day was I had planned on running with a shirt and, my whole outfit, but it was so hot I decided to run shirtless for two reasons. Number one is it was
I
super
just find
hot.
it hard to believe that you were planning on running with a shirt.
I
I've never seen you
was going to run with a
shirt
shirt on.
Okay.
And number two is my name was on, everyone had their name on their numbers. So I figured if some people whistled at me, that might spur me on. If somebody said, you look good or something like that, that would, really boost my self-esteem. So I run through a million people. Nobody, they're calling out
whistling.
everyone around me. Not one person says one thing to me. We even run through Boys Town in Chicago. None of the guys notice me. None of the girls notice me. Nobody notices me. We finally, it's probably mile 21, we turn into the south side of Chicago, which is not one of the nicer sections of Chicago. And a large woman who I believe takes compensation for her services finally says, "Nice body, baby." And I was like, well, that's all I got in Chicago. So
your name was actually, I was thinking like maybe your name was like Flack Down or something.
no. My name was on the bib, but nobody seemed to care.
The red light district of Chicago.
No, normally when you're running through Tampa, do you get whistles?
No.
Oh, okay. You just were
I
expecting
just thought I
it.
might, 1.5 million people, the odds were in my favor.
I saw a girl on TikTok, and she was like, 5 things I wish I would have known before running my marathon or ultra or whatever. And one of the things that she's like, get vinyl stickers and like print your name on the front and back of your shirt because people will scream your name. I don't know if I'll do that, but it was one of her suggestions. Because she's like, it
good
really
idea.
gets you through like the last, few miles.
That's good advice.
Yeah,
Take your
that
mind
is-
off what you're experiencing.
What walk us through your current training program in Tampa?
So right now I am primarily doing CrossFit. I've got a bunch of friends who are stationed at SOCOM, which is Special Forces Command in Tampa at MacDill Air Force Base. So every Special Forces mission you can think of, for the most part, is run out of Tampa. And I've become friends with a lot of guys that work there that are elite soldiers. And I've started training with them, and they started to let me program for them. So every morning, there'd be a handful of us, 4 or 5 of us, that were doing, idiotic things like running with vests and flipping tires and doing other things. Well, a couple
This is at his house, by the way.
yeah, at my house.
Oh, I was like, where is the program at?
Yeah, so I've got a pretty big garage, and I've got just about everything you could think of in it. Well, some of the other neighbors saw what we were doing, and these neighbors had never really trained before. A lot of these guys were, either has-beens or never was, and they started training with us. So we've got 2 tiers of people that work out with us now. We've got these the world's most elite fighting force, and then we also have neighborhood Bob.
You put everyone through the same thing?
Let's just say the neighborhood Bob gets some more moderate things to do, maybe a less weight. But some of those guys, it's amazing what they're capable of doing. They just didn't know it.
Were you ever hoping that Tom Brady would walk by and see you all doing this and ask to join in on the fun?
I don't know if Tom Brady, I think he was more into yoga. I was hoping Giselle might stop, but it never happened.
How old are the special ops guys?
Most of these guys who are all officers are in their 30s.
Okay. That you still have a few years on them. Yeah.
I'm much older than them, and I've got some city miles on me too.
Yeah. Do the other neighbors drive by at, was this like 6 o'clock in the morning? And are they like, what the hell is going on to Aidman?
One of the funniest experiences is one of the workouts we did one day was pushing a Jeep uphill for about a mile. And this very nice woman stopped and asked us if we needed help. We said, no, we're actually working out. And she just pauses for a second and says, "You're S-ing me," and drove off. So it does look a little odd to some people.
Have the boys joined in on this?
So my 13-year-old, who's a fantastic athlete, will join us, and he's really, really good. 15-year-old son's an athlete in his own regard. He's a wrestler, but he's in the middle of wrestling season, so he's not doing that stuff. And the funniest thing is I've got a 4-year-old daughter, so she'll come out and put us through a training routine, whatever she can think of.
She have like a whistle yell at you?
She's tough. I
That's
mean,
amazing.
She is not
I'm
take
sure
any
between
prisoners.
you and Danielle.
Because she
gotta
goes with
be tough.
Danielle to the CrossFit gym. I've seen
I
that.
mean, my wife's an amazing athlete. She ran hurdles in college and is now a better athlete than I am.
What tell us about Tampa? One thing we like to hear about is the places you go.
So I was born and raised in Tampa, which is pretty weird. We used to laugh because there was a sign up that would say, it was one of our big signs all around the city said, America's next great city. Well, it was up for like 20 years, so I guess it was never going to happen. It was always next. But there's been some real changes of late. There was an area near downtown that was purchased by some investors, and it's a completely changed city. In many regards, though, it's a little city that's got some big resources.
Where do you go though? Like,
where's
what's your
where's
spot?
staple spot?
Is Chichio and
Food,
Tony
drinks.
still on?
No, it's not even called that anymore.
Oh, okay.
The truth of the matter is, we do a lot of Uber Eats.
Yeah. So you don't go over to South Tampa that much anymore.
Well, I mean, we are in South Tampa. I mean, our favorite restaurant is still something called Burns, which is one of the best steakhouses in the world, and they've got one of the largest private collections of wine out there.
I think we should go to Gasparilla this year.
Gasparilla, I think, is at the end of January this year.
Early.
So for those of you all that don't know what Gasparilla is, it's sort of like Mardi Gras with a pirate theme.
Yeah.
And there's about 1 million people come out, sort of like the Purge without murder. All rules and laws seem to be suspended for the day.
That's why we should go.
Do we want to get into business stuff?
Yeah, let's talk work. So one of the things we were talking about even before we started was a lot of our work and our clients are really intrigued, or I would say even alarmed by the perception that there's a whole lot more union activity happening 2022, 2023. Walk us through what's going on, I think, with unions. Is there more activity, or is it just high profile? You know, we got the UAW, we got the...
So your clients are right.
Yeah.
There's a lot more union activity right now. So one of the things that's very difficult for businesses these days is, depending on who's in office, the rules can change dramatically. So the various different federal agencies can issue some sort of ruling, new person comes into office, and that rule is thrown away and the polar opposite happens. So that's a tough business climate. So this is not a political statement, but when a Democrat is a president, they're more likely going to have strong pro-labor people in charge, and that's what we've seen over the past few years. And as you've seen, unions have become really emboldened. You saw some of the auto manufacturer strikes. You see that out in Hollywood. You've seen that in healthcare with some pharmacists that have walked out of their jobs. They are emboldened. They do believe the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, will have their back, and they're right. Most of the rulings in the new fiats that have come out of the NLRB have been very pro-employee. Now, they got smart, though. It's not just for unionized employers. So employers are absolutely right to say, well, I worry that my employees may want to one day be unionized. But there are a number of really new stuff out there that has dramatically changed the landscape that the NLRB's got involved with, even if you've never had any union activity whatsoever. A good example is a lot of clients, when they terminate somebody, they want to offer them some sort of severance agreement or separation agreement. Mm-hmm. And typically people do this for a bunch of different reasons. Sometimes they just feel bad that they've let somebody go that's a longtime employee. Or perhaps they have some fear that that person may sue them if they are let go. Well, the other thing that's typically important to an employer is they don't want the employee talking about it, and they don't want the employee saying, or ex-employee saying bad things about the company. And the NLRB just recently ruled, whether you have a union or not, that if somebody's not a supervisory level employee, you cannot have a provision that is confidentiality, and you cannot have a provision that says you cannot disparage the company or its employees. And that's a dramatic sea change for employers who, for many times, that's why they were having these severance agreements.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's the law of unintended consequences. I've had a lot of clients now who say, well, if I can't have non-disparagement and if I can't have confidentiality, they get nothing. Mm-hmm. So while I think the NLRB might have thought that they were helping people, some people they've hurt because now they're getting let go and they don't have any money.
It's literally nothing.
Yeah. Another thing we've seen from the NLRB is they have a real issue with non-compete agreements. They believe that even if you're not unionized, could violate the National Labor Relations Act. So they've been going hot and heavy in Congress and through the NLRB after non-compete agreements.
What's the current status of non-compete agreements?
So it depends on where you're at. Right now, you better think long and hard. If you have an agreement for an employee that says you can't go work at a competitor, you better think long and hard about whether or not that provision is going to be enforceable. And you very well may find yourself in some trouble with the National Labor Relations Board for even having that provision, finding that that could violate the law. So a lot of employers are being very targeted when they use these things, really high-level employees. There was a company that you all probably bought a sandwich before from. It was having everyone sign these, and the NLRB got into a big fight with them about that, saying you don't have a compelling reason from keeping someone who just makes sandwiches from going to work at the competitor next door.
Yeah.
And a lot of employers are really limiting these things to, you can't steal our clients, you can't steal our trade secrets or our protected information, and you can't go after our employees either.
Non-solicit. So non-solicit's fine for now, but it's just
In most places, they're
so they're
fine.
separating them where they used to be combined. Thinking also about just the amount of union activity that's happened. I think back to like when we graduated law school, and I looked this up earlier. There had been such a steady decline of union activity from like the 80s into the 2000s. Like, remember, I clerked at the NLRB when we were in law school. Remember?
Sure.
When we were like, that's going to be an area of the law that's going to die within our lifetime. But to see what's happened recently, it's political, but I think it also is it a populist movement? Is it social media? Like all these things I think have kind of revived.
Yeah, so I think that's right. But you also see it in some new areas. Uber has been the target of, the whole concept of Uber is somebody could, Uber doesn't believe they employ anyone that is a driver. They're simply folks that may choose to give somebody a ride. So there have been some efforts to, in essence, try to find those folks as employees that could unionize. You've seen this with college athletes who are now claiming they're not actually students. They are employees of the university, and there's been a union organizing drive. So these things are, certainly prevalent. They're in the paper. They're high profile. What's different from when we were in law school, when you were clerking at the NLRB, is jobs have changed. Mm-hmm. So, it used to be you would have large manufacturing plants. And those were very ripe targets if you were a steel worker or an auto worker for unionization. But now they're really targeting different type organizations, particularly hospitals are good examples of organizations where you've got nurses who perhaps maybe have bad hours or are unhappy with their pay, and they have very powerful organizations that are helping to unionize them. Some of the unions have also used something called salters, where they will send somebody into a company under the auspice of wanting to work for the company and be an employee, but really the sole purpose they're going to work for the company is to try to unionize them. So they've gotten creative. You see far more union activities. And also the media is certainly the way they portray it. There was one successful union organizing drive against Amazon, and the papers reported as if this was going to be a sea change. What they didn't report is, Amazon ended up winning a couple drives thereafter. But you've got the NLRB just ordered reinstatement of a bunch of employees that had been terminated from Starbucks who were the leaders of the union organizing drive. And for many employers who are far removed from what union organizing drives are like, or sort of some of the antiquated notions, there used to be a day where employees really might work for a company their entire career, and they really looked up to, the company. They wanted to stay there and move up the corporate ladder. People are not necessarily as tied in together, and that's not their life ambition to work. They may have other things, and sometimes perhaps they're passionate about trying to get them maximize what they get, and they think the union is a way to do it, to work together. But a good plug for what you all do and why what I think you all do is so important. If I get a phone call from a client that says, we see some leaflets from our union, or we have an organizing drive, or we just got an unfair labor practice, guess what? It might be too late. Mm-hmm. So I believe union avoidance has really become a front-loaded business. And I think employers who do not have their fingers on the pulse of what their employees feel and what they want. So if I pulled 100 CEOs that were having a union organizing drive, and I asked every single one of them, why do you think this is happening? The first thing they will say is money.
Yep.
If I polled 100 employees who were pro-union, not one of them would say money is why. Typically, it's things such as respect
Yep.
or work conditions. And a lot of times employers are, particularly high-level executives, are just very far removed from what the employees actually think, what their work conditions are like. So I think what you all do in working with companies to sort of get an idea of what their employees actually think. Look, when you ask people how they feel about things, oftentimes they're going to tell you what the problems are. Sometimes you can force or create a problem by, saying, well, what's the matter or what can we do better? But if you don't understand the feedback or what they're thinking, then you may end up with a problem. It might not be a union, but it might be high turnover. It might be productivity problems. So there can be a lot of issues, and that's why I think it's really important for people to figure out what their culture actually is, because it's rarely what executives think it is.
Can't wait to bring you to our next client pitch.
I have found employers, so many of their problems could have been taken care of very easily. I dealt with a company that was in the concrete manufacturing world. The two big reasons the employees ended up wanting to have a union was there was no air conditioning in the trucks and the water fountain didn't work. So it's really hot during the summer in Florida. If they had just fixed the water fountain and installed air conditioning in the trucks, they very well could have avoided a union organizing drive.
That was the top issue in the UPS strike, was air conditioning in the trucks.
Doesn't surprise me.
Well, and we talk about that all the time, how if fundamental needs are not being met, nothing else you're going to do or say is going to solve anything. So if people are angry and again, they're suffering from heat stroke and they don't have water, you can't throw money. You could throw money at them, but you can't do anything else from like a culture perspective or from an employee experience perspective that will overcome the fundamental needs, because it's like you can't focus on how to get to something great if you're hungry and thirsty all the time.
That's why we always start.
We always
there.
start with, are the fundamental needs being met to the employee? And those fundamental
perceptions
needs,
too.
and perceptions.
So another thing that we spend a lot of time talking to clients about is helping them communicate around their D&I initiatives and their programs. And with the Supreme Court ruling earlier this year, now those programs have come under attack, especially if they have specific goals aligned with them. And so employers are trying to figure out how do I manage that? How do I communicate around it? What are you telling clients right now?
So interestingly enough, this is related. A number of law firms have been sued over the past year following the Supreme Court decision. For those of y'all may not know what the Supreme Court decision said, was you're not supposed to give preference to minorities. And different organizations, whether it be universities or employers, have defined minorities in different ways. Some have just looked at sexual orientation and race, but a lot of employers have started out with very well-intentioned design programs to whether diversify their workforce or perhaps look more like their customer base, and to meet sometimes that's what the customers are demanding. They want somebody either that looks like them or an organization that takes diversity very seriously. Employers need to be very, very cautious now, because a lot of these DEI programs, as well-intentioned as they are, have become discrimination. If you're picking a candidate not because of their objective criteria for the job, but based upon some protected trait, and you may say, well, I've decided to hire this person because they're this color and we don't have enough people of that color, and so I'm going to bring them on. That may be an admirable goal, and people can debate whether or not that's a positive thing to do, but believe it or not, that's discrimination. So you got to be very, very cautious now. Companies do need to relook at what their DEI is, and there are some states who have taken a really hard look on some of the training. There is some training out there that takes a historical perspective on the United States as being an oppressive country, and some of that training in of itself can cause a real culture problem, can ostracize people, because somebody may say, wait a minute, my grandparents are from Ireland or here. They didn't have anything to do with slavery or women's suffrage. They were working a field somewhere in some far off land. What do I have to do with anything to do with this? So you got to be cautious.
Let me ask you something real quick,
Sure.
just before we get too far away from it. Explain why it's discrimination, because I don't think the average person understands that statement because, well, they're not lawyers, so they don't know that how discrimination is defined, right? They're thinking, well, a D&I program is trying to make everyone equal, right? Like that's how they're thinking of it. So why is it having a program that tries to bring everyone to that goal? How is that discrimination is defined?
So I guess I would respectfully disagree with you about how people are defining D&I. I think some people may say, okay, we historically haven't, for instance, had women in management, for instance, give them an opportunity.
Yeah.
Or they say, we don't have enough African Americans working for us. So we're going to make sure our next 3 hires are African Americans. So if you get 9 candidates and one of them happens to be African American and 8 are different races, if several of those candidates of a different race have objectively better criteria, whatever those criteria may end up being, but you say, you know what, I've decided I want to hire this particular candidate because of their protected category that I don't think we have enough in the organization, you've committed discrimination. You have made a hiring decision, as well-intentioned as that hiring decision may have been, you've committed discrimination by specifically saying that. Now, there are all sorts of things that you can do. So, for instance...
Real quick, though, I would say that I think people would think that that's not discrimination, though, because it's, quote unquote, the right thing to do.
So it depends on who you ask
Yeah.
about the right thing to do. That candidate who is in a different race that says I had superior qualifications but doesn't get the job may not think you did the right thing.
Yeah.
They may strongly disagree with that statement. Look, I'm sympathetic to the concept of quote unquote doing the right thing, but beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That's a very subjective thing. And if you're not careful, you're going to get the law of unintended consequences. You also can get some very negative publicity about discrimination.
So one thing that we actually talk about a lot with our clients, especially since this ruling, is one thing that I experienced when I was at my old agency with one of our clients, is they actually would intentionally go out, and part of their hiring strategy, their talent acquisition strategy, was to make sure that they were going to a lot of different types of neighborhoods where maybe people didn't have cars to get to a store to apply for a job. So they're actually taking a mobile vehicle to allow people to apply for the job in their neighborhood. So it was providing more of a fair way to have access to a job.
It's a great
and
idea.
Therefore, they automatically had a diverse candidates. A lot of the jobs didn't require people to leave their neighborhoods. They could do the job from home, or they were getting on a truck every day and they were going out and servicing different areas. But we always say there's so many different ways to do it. The easy way is to try and say, oh, I'm just going to try and meet a quota. The hard way is to actually get into communities and create those relationships where naturally you can just attract people of different backgrounds.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can have activities and initiatives that produce that outcome without saying this is the goal for that outcome, right? So that's what we talk about is what Nikki just mentioned is that's an activity that we know could possibly get you more candidates that align with what your intentions are without having that specific goal.
Well, and I
Absolutely.
even think
Yeah.
about women. So I'm sure like a lot of female leadership programs are probably under fire as well in companies because of this. Like men might feel like they're being discriminated against if there's a specific women's leadership program that obviously men aren't allowed to be into, and therefore women get either paid more or like whatever the outcome is after they graduate from this leadership program. We had a client that was saying, what do we do about this? Because we still want to continue to make sure we're hiring really smart women. And one thing that we said is getting out into the university systems and having females from your engineering groups go to these universities and say, hey, like, just as a female, this is what I'm experiencing there. I love it. I have great equal opportunity. They're really flexible with maternity, whatever it is, and attracting more women that way to the job versus trying to say, we're specifically going to meet a quota or we're specifically going to check a box?
Sure, I'm dealing with a case right now where a white male has brought a suit against a company, and he probably was the most qualified for the position, and he alleged that the CEO of the company said, look, you probably are the best candidate. However, I have enough males in my senior leadership. I want a female. And, that arguably is intentional discrimination.
What are you telling clients that come to you and say, we've got specific goals to meet these DE&I initiatives that we've outlined? Let's just say women, like we want to have 50% women in management by X year. What should we do, Todd?
I would tell them if you've got quotas, it's a bad idea. So if you've specifically said, I want X, then you are likely going to find yourself subject of litigation. If you say, ultimately I'd like to have a more diverse workforce, whether it be women or something else within my organization, I would first talk to you about where you're going for your applicants. So the point you brought up, Nikki, is a good one of going to more places, where you're marketing, where you're advertising, to get more candidates within the organization. You also got to make sure that people have mentors. So there may be somebody that joins your organization, maybe they're a diverse candidate or somebody that, there's very few people that look like them, and maybe they feel alone on the island. So giving them what they call is giving them a rabbi, somebody who can really help shepherd and help them grow. I think that's a positive.
Let's talk about return to office, not return to work. We're working, but return to office.
Yeah.
Return to office mandates.
We got in trouble for saying return to work because people were, you're working from
They're
home.
already
still.
working now. But
What are you seeing on return to office mandates, and what are you telling clients?
So I sort of would like to talk about that subject in two different ways. Number one is let's talk about it from a legal perspective. For the most part, employers can mandate employees return to work. Where you're running into some problems is when somebody says they have health issues that would prevent them from returning to work. And you've got to think most lawyers, employment lawyers, are going to preach to you consistency. This is one of the few areas where you can't be consistent. You're going to have to look at things on an individualized basis. Can you provide an accommodation allowing somebody to work from home or continue to work from home? So I think a lot of employers have found that employees can really do their job from home, and perhaps with the younger generation, that's the culture that they've grown accustomed to. I've heard some crazy stories about people opening new beautiful offices and nobody comes to work.
Yeah, we know a lot of them.
Yeah. So, and I think that's really something to think about. What's your workforce? There are certain workforces where, being there together helps with creativity or supervision. It really depends on what type of organization you're at.
So the only legal challenge that an employee really has to return to office mandate is a health challenge.
For the most part, that's going to be, a health challenge will be their only way of saying, I can't come back to work because as an accommodation, you've got to allow me to continue to work from home because I'm afraid of, my health will suffer being around a bunch of people.
Did you ever work from home?
Never. Matter of fact, I went crazy.
Shocker.
Florida did not have the same lockdowns as other states, so I think my city kept me out of the office for 2 weeks, and after that I was in there every day. It was me and the homeless people in downtown Tampa. That was
There's
it.
homeless people in downtown Tampa?
Now there are.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. What is your firm's policy?
So it depends on where you're at.
Okay.
We have not fully mandated return in each of our offices. We have 28 offices. So, in California, where people have longer commutes and are more accustomed from working from home, we've allowed that to happen. In other places, we've, people are in the office and like being in the office. A lot of our staff are working hybrid schedules, so perhaps they'll work a couple of days from home and a couple of days in the office. But, everyone's got a different place. We don't have a one-size uniform policy that everyone must be there 5 days a week.
Is it office policies, or are you leaving it up to kind of managers, leaders, partners to decide?
We've got little different factions that we're doing our best to try to make everyone happy. But, to be honest, we've been very fortunate. We haven't seen a lot of people that have been upset. We haven't been heavy-handed in forcing people to do things. But we certainly have encouraged people to show up when they feel comfortable and it works, because typically that helps with opportunities and supervision and working together.
So Ed Carlstead's not walking around the Tampa office checking the box to see if everyone's there every day.
He might be doing it to me when I don't show up.
So, since the pandemic, what other employment law trends have you seen, or what should employers anticipate, in the coming years?
Well, what I definitely think they should be anticipating is paid leave, whether it be for serious health conditions or pregnancy leave. I think things are trending that way. So when the Family Medical Leave Act went into place, those who drafted it swore up and down, this is unpaid and you'll never have to worry about it, this being paid. Many other countries have mandated paid leave. There are people that will argue that it's good for the company to allow people to take time off and not have to worry about losing their jobs. I think employers are going to continue to see a bunch of high turnover because a lot of people can get another dime going to another place, or they might like the working conditions better, or they might be able to get some government subsidy. So one of the big fights, for instance, a lot of folks out of college, they're working because they want to pay off their college tuition, the loans they took. There's been quite a fight about whether or not the government can, with a magic wand, do away with tuition debt. And if the government can do away with tuition debt, you've taken away one of the incentives for people, as I guess the younger kids say, living their best lives.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Huh. What about pay transparency laws?
So this one's really, really interesting. Pay transparency laws come in a bunch of different flavors. Some you have to disclose what exactly the job's going to pay or what the range is. Some are, in essence, trending towards having to say what everyone's already making. One of the things that many states and cities have tried to do have outlawed asking the question of how much are you currently making? And the thought process behind that is people bat around the statistics of women statistically making less money than men for the same jobs. There's all sorts of arguments about why that is or is not true. But let's just accept for a second that there is some validity to that. That if a woman applies for a job and says, okay, I'm making X, then the company may pay her less than a male who is in the identical job at another employer making more money.
Yeah.
So there are ways to deal with that. One of the ways, I deal with it all the time. So I hire partners and attorneys for our firm. So one of the ways I do that now is I don't ask them what they're currently making, although I do think that's an important thing to know, because maybe somebody's just making too much money and we're not the right opportunity for them. Or, perhaps giving them some small bump. I want to make sure I'm in the right range. But what I will ask them is, what are your expectations? What would you like to make? And thankfully, nobody says $1 million in a Learjet. People are, give us an idea of what their expectations are. And I think you can ask that question.
So transition into our last segment here. One thing we'd like to ask individuals like yourself that have had successful careers, what advice do you give young people that tell you they want to go to law school?
Well, most people say don't do it. I love being a lawyer. I really have not had a bad day at work. I think it's a wonderful career. I'm very fortunate that I've had the same job since August 12th, 1999. I'd like to think that's not because nobody else would take me, but I found, what I think is the best employment firm in the country, FordHarrison, and they've given me great opportunities. So
I'll never forget how happy you were when you got that offer letter.
But as far as telling law students what advice I'd give them is, Chad and I have been friends now for, 24 years, and we're working together right now. the people you go to law school with, one day maybe your colleagues, maybe you're a referral source, maybe somebody you want to work with. So make as many connections as possible as you can in law school, and try to keep those connections up, because, you know, when you first get out of law school, those people are going to be in the same level you are. But 10, 15, 20 years from now, they may be decision makers within organizations.
It's, by the way, it's incredible
It really, I was just going to
how
say this.
everyone has said the exact same answer.
Relationships.
Relationships is what we tell young people. They matter, because we see so many young people not making those lasting
They're like,
relationships.
oh, I don't really care. I don't need, to keep in touch with those people, especially because of social media.
Yeah.
It's harder to keep in touch with people because you feel like you are, but you're not.
The other thing I would definitely tell law students, and particularly young lawyers, is don't take yourself so seriously.
Yep. For
You
sure.
know, particularly young lawyers like to use 3-syllable words and sound lawyerly. When
Yeah.
I see a letter that says "govern yourself accordingly," I say you're a tool.
Yeah.
And I always respond, "I've been governed accordingly." It's just such a dumb, So
Never get drunk at a bar and say, "Do you know who I am? I'm a lawyer."
yeah, do you know who I am? Everyone loves that. I don't like to speak in cliches, but there was one that really resonated with me as a young lawyer, and it was that the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah.
And I really found that to be true. I can't tell you what, to the degree in which I've had success in my career, I can't tell you I set out to do specific things I'm doing. But I'll give you an example. One of the cases I handled as a baby lawyer, I was on my hands and knees in a suit measuring a toilet paper dispenser.
I remember that.
An individual had brought a lawsuit claiming that the bathroom was not accessible to the disabled. Never thought I was going to go to law school to measure a toilet paper dispenser. It just so happened that this toilet was part of a hotel. Within the hotel was a restaurant in a national chain that most people have eaten at some point or another. They also got sued. So I said to them, hey, you're sued as well. My client's on the hook for your lawsuit because of their lease. If you'd like me to help you on this as well, I can. And they said yes, and they were really happy with the work I had done, particularly since they weren't paying the bills. And I ended up, 15 years later, becoming their attorney nationwide. So the whole point is, I worked really hard and I did a really cruddy job. When I say a really cruddy job, what I was doing, I didn't like measuring a toilet paper dispenser or seeing if the door force was enough for somebody in a wheelchair. But by doing that, by doing something that was not necessarily the most ideal assignment, really helped. The other thing I have found is if you go out of your way to help people, look for opportunities to whether provide them information or job opportunities, or,
Yeah.
If somebody says, hey, do you know anyone that, mows lawns? Go out of my way to refer them to somebody. People remember that, and perhaps one day they may pay it back to you in one way or the other, or at least you've done your good deed.
I agree. So it's relationships, it's hard work, and it's doing good things for people.
Yeah, it's amazing how that pans out.
I know. Nikki and I were talking about this morning, because we knew we were going to ask you that question. And we've also asked people how did you get to this point? Which I said with Todd, it's the hard work side, and that's what
You said you've never met anyone that works harder than Todd.
that's true. I said it was a combination, and this is what I want to ask you: hard work, but then also you were incredibly bold. For our age, your aggressiveness toward meeting people, building those relationships, asking the hard, can you hire me? You were asking questions to senior business leaders as a 24-year-old, extreme confidence.
Yeah.
How did you have that?
So two things. Number one, I got to tell you a little story of how I got to that mindset, because I was pretty lucky. My grandfather, who passed away at 99 years of age, served in World War II, and then he ended up opening his own law firm in Richmond, Virginia, that still bears his name as a very well-known law firm in Virginia. And when I was going to law school, he sat me down. He said, Todd, you need to know that there's only two ways to be very valuable to a law firm. He said, you either have to have a unique skill set that only you have, and the law firm says, I've got to turn to you for that skill set, or you've got to be responsible for client relationships. And then he paused for a few seconds and says, you're not so smart, so you better go get clients. And so I'm one of those people, I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at. I'm really, I think I'm the best at things I enjoy. If I don't enjoy something, if I don't like something, I don't really want to do it. So I found the stuff I enjoyed. But as a baby lawyer, that's a problem because people are giving you the grunt work they didn't want to do.
Yep.
So the only way I was going to get to do the stuff I wanted was to go get clients. But there was a problem. And Chad, you mentioned, why are you asking CEOs for business? Why on earth would they? I mean, I still had pimples. I hadn't finished puberty. Why on earth would they want to hire me? And the question is, if they're in the right mind, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
So I got really good talking about the law firm in general and other people. So my partner, I'd say, boy, they're the smartest lawyer in the history of the world. You really should hire my partner on this. And it's much easier to say nice things about other people than about yourself. By the way, so all of us, and this is true in just about every industry, if you're only selling yourself, there's only a finite amount of things you can do because of time in the day and skill set. But I've got partners who are brilliant and do other things I can or will not do. So I make sure I can put them in touch with clients, and it's an opportunity to expand the business. And again, it's much easier to brag about other people than yourself.
For sure. You're incredibly responsive too. I think that was what stood out to me. I mean, as a client, but I knew you would answer my calls no matter what, but I could see how you treated your other clients too. Like there's a lot of lawyers I had that I'd call and never answer the phone.
Well, so in my line of work, so I'm in the service industry. I am literally no different other than I had to go to 3 years of school and maybe have a fancy diploma. I am no different than the person that brings you copy paper or stocks your Coke machine if people still have Coke machines. So, I've always viewed that when people call me, they don't say, hey, I've got this project in 6 months. I want you to be thinking about it. They've got an emergency. So if they believe you care and you truly have their best interests in mind, that's a long way to get loyalty from a client.
Like the approach when we started building this business
That's what we did.
was,
Yeah.
we answer that one call on the weekend. If it's an emergency or they really need something, that just gets us business in the future because they see us as a partner, not just as a service provider.
I live in a constant state of paranoia that if I don't answer their call in the weekend, they're going to call somebody else.
Yeah.
And there'll be somebody else out there that will take their call.
Same.
So I've lived in a constant state of paranoia, which is not necessarily great for mental health,
Yeah.
but it's been very good for a career.
Well,
Yeah.
we're there with you. That's why we all work out so much.
Yeah.
Luckily, I actually really like talking to people, so I
Yeah, she
answer the
likes
phone
it.
calls on the weekends, and it drives him crazy because I'll end up talking to.
We'll be on a bike ride and she'll hear her phone
like, "Hold on."
ringing and she'll pull over and answer the phone while we're on a bike
Well,
ride.
we're lucky that I really like all of our clients.
Yeah.
Maybe if we had a client that I didn't like, I would be like, eh.
Yeah, so one of my friends who is an elite soldier used an expression once. I won't use the actual language, but he said moderation is for a 4-letter word. And I've always believed that if you're going to do something, go all in. Otherwise, don't do it at all. Whether it be joining an organization or volunteering for something, if you're not there and not actually giving it all, people don't feel that. You're not interested in taking a leadership position. You're just a warm body. They will never remember you, and they will not use you for something else.
Well, I think that's a great way to end.